Thank you, everybody, for joining this interesting event. What a great opportunity to be part of today's discussion. My name is André Kiene, and I'm running the solution business for Microsoft here in Germany. I'm really happy to welcome Professor Sami Haddadin and our CEO Satya Nadella here on our virtual live call. Thank you both for taking the time. There will be time for questions in the end, so please type your questions into the chat window. Before I hand over to them, I want to briefly introduce the two to you. Professor Sami Haddadin is the director of the Munich School of Robotics and Machine Intelligence here at the Technical University of Munich and holds the chair of Robotics and System Intelligence. He is always striving for new ideas in how to use AI and robotics to improve our world and make our lives easier. Satya Nadella is our Chief Executive Officer at Microsoft, and before being named as CEO in February 2014, Satya held various leadership roles in both enterprises and consumer businesses across the company. Joining Microsoft in 1992, he quickly became known as a leader who could span a breadth of technologies and business to transform some of Microsoft's biggest product offerings and challenges. In this discussion today, we want to focus on the future of technologies like AI and robotics, the opportunity they bring with them, and how they can help us to shape our future while always being people-centric. If you have any question, as already said, during the discussion, please use the Q&A chat window, and we will make some time, at least some of them, to answer them in the last 10 minutes. So, Satya, we are so happy to have you virtually visiting us yesterday and today. So tell us a bit, why are you virtually visiting Germany today, and why is Germany important to Microsoft?
First of all, thank you so much, Andre and Sami. It's great to be able to join both of you and be virtually at the Technical University of Munich. I've been, in fact, visiting Germany since last early morning. I got up at 3 a.m. Seattle time and I beamed into Germany yesterday. And I must say, even with these virtual visits, you have jet lag. So at least there is something common between my both visits. It's to me, Germany. We've been in Germany as a company for the last 37 years. It's a very important area for us. But quite frankly, when I think about it, as a multinational company, I am fundamentally grounded on the fact that unless and until we can engage locally in Germany, look at how we're helping small businesses in Germany become more productive. Large multinational companies in Germany become more competitive globally using the latest of technology. Public sector become more efficient, or health outcomes, education outcomes becoming better. Right, that local surplus creation through digital technology platforms we create is the most important part of our business. So in some sense, the way I stay grounded is to visit Germany, see how we're contributing to progress around digital technology capability. In fact, I always say it's not about dependence on Microsoft. It is how are we helping organizations we work with build independence, whether it's in a technical university like TUM or a small business or a large company like Volkswagen. It's all about their digital capability. And that's why I think it's very important for me to be able to have a chance to visit Germany, learn, and make sure we're contributing.
Perfect. Sami, tell us, how would you define the roles and responsibilities of a technology company like Microsoft in our challenging and varying times?
Well, I think that's a great question, but I think what would be even more interesting to all of us, and just give me also the chance to welcome Satya at TUM, and we're really happy to have you here, one of the leaders in the world in technology, and one of also the forethinkers as a manager. And we would actually be really interested in hearing your thoughts about such a giant, such a tech giant like Microsoft. How do you think technology in such worrying and challenging times play a role, and what is the responsibility and the role of these extremely important tech companies such as Microsoft?
It's the important question, Sami. One of the things that I fundamentally believe, I mean, obviously we are right now living through a massive challenge. In fact, you could even say there are multiple challenges all rolled into one. There is a health challenge. There is a broad economic opportunity challenge, the social unrest that comes with it. So I think it's a time for us to be able to ask that fundamental question that you're asking. So for example, I feel if you look at even productivity stats and economic growth, I'm a big student of economics. There's an economist out of Northwestern, Robert Gordon, who wrote a book once, critiquing in some sense productivity of digital technology. In fact, he compares the era of 1870 to 1940 to the recent past and says we've not actually had the type of economic progress that has been broad spread like the previous century. In fact, he talks about digital technology and he says the last time really there was productivity growth because of digital technology was when the PC showed up in the workplace. So I think that one of the fundamental things, even coming out of this COVID-19 crisis, we all will need to make sure we do is drive all up economic growth that's broad, right? So it's not just about a few companies on the West Coast of the United States or the East Coast of China. It's about every country, every sector of the economy, whether it's the automotive industry, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail, whether it's financial services. So that means the overall growth has to be much more inclusive than anything that we have seen in the last few decades. Second, I think we'll need trust in technology. One of the fundamental things that I think is going to be absolutely needed is more trust because of how we protect security, how do we protect privacy, ethics in AI, or internet safety. These are all very important issues for us to ensure that there's more trust in technology, not less trust in technology. We also need to make sure that we don't break the planet. In other words, you need to really ensure that all this economic growth that comes is building a sustainable world. So I would say that's what the overarching goal here is. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And foundational to that, even at the business model level, is how can we build those building blocks, platforms, tools, that's who we are, so that others can build more technology, but that technology leads to economic growth that's more inclusive, more trusted, more sustainable. So that's how I see it. It's not about one product. It's not about the consumer internet. It is much more broader, unless and until we view the opportunity. And that's why it's exciting to see how you are thinking about machine intelligence, robotics, and your approach in a multidisciplinary way of how embodied AI can have an impact in the real world. That's a much better approach than, one more consumer internet application that just drives consumption.
Wonderful to hear that. So that sounds like a great statement for our field. And as a scientist and technologist, we're actually extremely interested in how I heard the word inclusive. I also think I kind of heard diversity in a way. So I think it's extremely important to especially now in a time where digital technology is kind of an enabler to connect us, right? I mean, there were many discussions about trustworthiness, about digital technology separating people, but now we can see how we reconnect and how we can actually build communities around this technological revolution that took place the last 20 years. So, and if we foresee that, what are your thoughts on this idea of, now with AI becoming more and more a tool for people, but also a tool that is reserved for a very distinct set of people? How can we make sure that the digital divide that we are more and more seeing does not get accelerated by these transformative revolutions we will see with embodied AI and all the things that come with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very important question. There are a couple of things around AI. I think that we absolutely need to make first-class considerations. First is you need to have a principled approach. Like one of the things that I always say is let's not abdicate control of AI, because we are the designers of AI. So in fact, we can, for example, have even a principled approach to design of AI that says AI should be enhancing human capability, empowering human capability, helping humans And that's a design choice. So augmenting, and this has been always the case, right? Whether AI augments or replaces has been there from day one, and in fact, two schools of philosophy around it. So I feel I at least fall fully into the augmentation camp. Having said that, I think we need to have real principles which are engineering principles. It can't be an abstract concept. For example, at Microsoft, we've taken what is our core engineering principles and made it part of the design time. Whether it's fairness, whether it's robustness, privacy, security, transparency, accountability, all of these are not just concepts, but they're really part and parcel of the tool chain. So for example, you're building a language model. How can you debias the language model so that it's fair because of all the word embeddings that capture essentially the bias from the corpus on which it is trained? Let's build the debugging tools to debias the models. So in some sense, we are really making sure that we are doing everything in the engineering process at design time. I also believe we'll need to do things on the runtime, right? Runtime, both in terms of, let's take facial recognition. What use cases should we use facial recognition for and not use facial recognition? If facial recognition is being used to discriminate, create bias in our society, that's something that we can't, allow. And some of it has to be self-regulation and also regulation in the world. After all, without GDPR, we wouldn't have protection for privacy. I think the same is going to be true even in the runtime side of AI. So I feel that I think we as creators of AI and universities like yours that are really teaching students to be practitioners of AI and future entrepreneurs and leaders, having that approach where we are grounded in what are the ethics of AI, the design of AI, and not abdicating control, and knowing fully well that it needs to become a first-class engineering construct, not just sort of principles, is at least how we're approaching.
Absolutely. So I think you were mentioning an extremely important topic as well for us as universities. One of the grand challenges, obviously, how do we prepare our students to become AI specialists with the human in the center of their thinking in a way, right? So how do they make this not only a technological view, but also a part of the way of thinking that technology serves the human, which I think is along the lines of what you were saying. At the same time, what we're seeing right now, at least in Germany, we have a bit the feeling that we both agree that AI is a transformative technology, right? We see all the opportunities, obviously lots of challenges, but I mean, we can see that this is something that will create enormous value and opportunities we have not foreseen a couple of years ago. But industry seems to be still pretty reluctant and very traditional in many dimensions. And what can we do to really kind of also bring this transformation we saw in our normal lives in some sense? How can we bring this transformative technology to industry, to the next generation of entrepreneurs, to the German Mittelstand, and so on and so forth? All these, very classical and well-established players in the field, how can they benefit from that without losing their legacy in a way, I guess?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing in Germany, right? Because I feel the way the German industry will evolve is to basically make digital technology as well as AI just another factor of production that they mold into where already Germany is competitive, right? I mean, take what Volkswagen will need to do and is doing in terms of becoming more of a software-driven company. In fact, we are partnered very deeply in ensuring that they have as much capability around software as they've had in anything else that they've done in automotive. Similarly, I mean, in another example I was reading up here just even yesterday, is a construction company in Germany that's in fact using the latest in natural language with speech recognition to empower their frontline construction workers to do documentation of their construction project. Right? I mean, that is an example of somebody who is a local solution partner in Germany working with a construction company to empower a construction worker to do better digital documentation of their site. I mean, think about that, right? So that's about productivity in the construction industry. So I think that there are many ways, and in fact, some of the demos you showed me about, let's say chronic care management with embodied AI. I mean, talk about a crisis like coronavirus, where we need those robots that can, in fact, be extensions of expertise. One of the things we have seen is telemedicine take off in this. Just imagine telemedicine with robotic embodiment at the edge to help with chronic care management. So I think that there is many ways that every industry can be transformed using these technologies and drive up that economic progress, which is much more inclusive and much more impactful. I don't subscribe to that lump of labor fallacy. I mean, always with technology advances, we've had this issue of displacement, which is real. We will have to deal with that. So one of the other areas, which I think we will have to, as a society, really make sure we focus on, is how do we do skilling? Not only skilling of students graduating and getting jobs, but also people who are in the industry today. Again, in the mid-market of Germany, where you have some of these amazing companies, how do you really help them reskill in digital tools? Every employee there, that's another area that we are very keenly engaged in.
Mm-hmm. So if you think about like the perfect machine that you would like to have, the best intelligent machine in a use case, or in a kind of scenario you wish that this would come true, what would that be? That would be super interesting, I guess, to all the people who are listening to us.
I mean, to me, if I think about it, right, what is economic progress? What is broad wealth creation for the world? It's creation of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's these knowledge turns, right? So the dream, I think you and I and everyone in this sort of university and everywhere else has, is what can we do to speed up knowledge creation and those knowledge turns. And so to me, that's what it is. So for example, if we can take we're here in the midst of COVID-19. I wish we had already made massive advances in our ability to simulate and understand the immune system's response to various virus loads. Right, that's what we need. The fact that we don't yet, I mean, this is one of the most fascinating things. So to me, the fact that in 2020, we don't have that real world evidence-based system to be able to take everything that's happening in the biological side and use digital systems and AI to help us perhaps find the therapeutic, which is personalized, right? We know that any therapeutic today still will be a brute force, administration of a drug that doesn't take into account, for example, how everybody's immune system is different. But what if we could do that? We can do that on an e-commerce site for personalizing products that you should buy. I would much rather have better healthcare than just an e-commerce site with more products to buy. And I think that that's what I want to look forward to.
Mm. Thank you very much, Satya, and thank you very much, Sami. I think it's now time to open up the panel for the question that both of you can answer. And I would like to hand over to Maria and Elisabeth to probably raise the first question.
Okay, so hi, I'm Maria from MSRM, and I have the honor to pass on questions from our students to you. So we had a few questions coming in. The first is around responsible AI, and in particular, how to tackle bias in decisions taken by an artificial intelligence. So I guess particularly when thinking about sensitive areas where algorithms can be used, such as in hiring or healthcare, our students would like to know whether you believe that AI's decisions will be less biased than human ones, or whether AI will even make this problem worse. And in this case, when we need sort of human-in-the-loop decision-making in order to ensure that AI systems are developed responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, to me, as we talked about it briefly, I mean, AI safety is one of the bigger topics of research for us. And I first of all, think that there's much more work to be done here. Let me first admit that. But one thing that I do feel is we do need to take the engineering practice. I go back even to how we approach security, right? So as software engineers, when we started building software products that had security holes, we all sort of developed much more sophistication in just the practice of software development. Threat modeling became a fundamental thing that all of us did whenever we built code. So the question is, what can we do about the same, what's the model equivalent of that in AI development? Take data. What are the first decisions? We all talk about somehow models being biased, but how did they become biased in the first place? If we only understood much more about the lineage of data, where did the data come from? How did we train? What changed about data? It's fascinating to think about. Data is the one place where we don't have data sheets. We have data sheets for all the electronic components, but we really don't have data sheets for data. So I think that there is a lot more that can be done in terms of the engineering practice. And as Microsoft, we're a tools company, so I really look a lot about what is the ML ops. We talk about DevOps and Agile ops and so on. What is the ML ops that will allow an engineering practitioner to ensure that the training is done well? We know the lineage of data. We know how to test for bias before you put a model into production. So there is a lot of mundane consideration. There are the big ethics, human in the loop. What about even if the human is not in the loop and the bad decisions are happening? How do you detect it? There are many, many issues, both in the design time and runtime. But I do think that we should start by taking this as a serious engineering consideration as well.
Thank you. Sami, is there anything you'd like to add, or before we go to the next question?
I think this was a wonderful answer. There's nothing to compliment here, Natya, right?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I have the second question for you from the students. So the next question is aimed at students who are looking to define their career trajectories and deciding what fields to specialize in. So they're wondering, what are, in your eyes, the biggest research challenges in the intersection of robotics and machine learning? And what do you expect these challenges will be in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, I would love to even hear Sami's views on it. But quite frankly, I was very intrigued when I was even reading last night about your institute here and how you're taking a very multidisciplinary approach. I think is the way to go. In fact, if you go back to even what I was talking about, like for example, take learning. I'm very intrigued by human learning. And I look at what would it take, just imagine, for classroom outcomes to become better, right? Today, ultimately, it's the great teachers, it's the motivated students that help. But if we wanted to really deliver educational outcomes at scale, I wonder whether we can bring the latest advances in our understanding of neuroscience, our understanding of psychology, and our understanding of delivery of personalized education, because we all learn differently. If we can bring those three things together, just imagine what we can do to those knowledge turns in educational outcomes. I mean, once you change educational outcomes, you can change pretty much everything. Same thing with health. So I'm much more a believer in this multidisciplinary approach to making massive breakthroughs. So I think even, for example, some of the robotics work that Sami was showing me, it's healthcare with embodied AI that can make a difference to chronic care management. Specifically on AI, the one area that I'm very excited about, and I was mentioning this to Sami, is what's happening with natural language. Right, and these large-scale multimodal model training models, like what we just, the GPT-3, that OpenAI released. Before that, what we had done with our Turing model, it's unbelievable to see the progress. So now I look at it and say, well, let's make it much more multimodal, and what we can do in machine reading and comprehension and language understanding can be a huge advance. Even in, again, going into healthcare. I mean, one of the biggest issues we have in healthcare is the fact that we lack the longitudinal health record. And in order to have a longitudinal health record, you need to be able to take information out of medical notes of doctors. So natural language processing can in fact be very, very helpful in healthcare and the development of the real data. But, very exciting to even see what's happening in Sami's lab. But maybe, Sami, you want to add a little bit about how you see the future there.
Sure, it would be my pleasure to also share some thoughts here, because I think what Satya was mentioning was really kind of opening the door for some of the things that I would like to also pinpoint to. I really think that this whole interdisciplinary approach that we're more and more taking in technology that is not only interdisciplinary within technology, but actually within societal dimensions, within ethical dimensions, philosophical dimensions even, thinking what technology will really be as an implementation in our society and how can we really tackle some of the grand challenges of our time. I think we have been seeing within the last 2 years some of really tremendous challenges being thrown at us to some extent. The environmental challenge, the health challenge we're kind of facing now, the communication channel, the supply challenge. So we can really see that these things are still there to be solved, and they can only be solved as a part of a team. I think it's also clear to me as an educator that the students and the researchers that I would like to inspire really become team players with grand visions and understanding that this is the way to go, that this is really the time of grand challenges that we as technologists really should take ownership in and team up with the right people, with the right industry, with the right thinkers to actually be able to tackle that. And just think about also the way that I mean, Satya was mentioning the substitution aspect about AI. I also would love to see more and more young people in research, in industry, and also users of technology to understand that what we are creating or what we should create are tools that empower humans to do things that they couldn't do before. I mean, there is not a competition between tech and human. It should be humans using tech to be more capable than without.
So time is running, so I'm afraid we only have time for one final last question with a quick answer, because I think it's a very important question we got from our students, because it concerns our education landscape, with a reference also on COVID-19 and how it has forced a lot of companies to innovate on the go. So I guess the question is more general, that artificial intelligence is increasingly transforming industry, replacing some job types, reshaping, creating others. So this means for our students, AI will impact their future careers. And the question would be whether you believe that universities are already adequately preparing students for this changing world. And if not, what would need to be done?
Yeah, I mean, it's lots is packed into that question. In some sense, I think the one notion that I would hope is very clear to everyone who is in university today and who graduates and gets into the economy and society is that learning doesn't stop after graduation. At some level, hopefully all of you sort of view what you're doing at the university is learning to think. So that you can continue that learning process. If anything, when I look at Microsoft and even the culture we are trying to build inside our own company, is to not think of ourselves as know-it-alls, but to be learn-it-alls. And that I think is going to be important. But one of the other things that I do believe, especially since you're an elite educational institution, I think it is important for us to realize that it's not just about education at elite levels. If anything, our goal should be to, I call it, shift left. What I mean by that is really reduce the expertise needed to do jobs. How do we, in fact, democratize access to some of the skills and technology? For example, I'm actually as interested. And I think Germany and other countries in Europe have done a much better job of this than I would say in the United States, where we need to be able to even take people who have a high school diploma and provide them great economic opportunity because of the learning paths we can provide so that they can learn, through the apprenticeship programs and others that you have in Germany. You've done a fantastic job of that. I hope that we can learn from it world over, so that we can create better learning paths that democratize even the skills that are needed. When I look at LinkedIn's economic graph, that's what I'm looking at, which is what are those jobs of the future? What are the skills required? Let us not artificially inflate the skills required. In fact, if anything, let us help, in fact, anybody who's working even in the labor force today, pick up these skills as fast as they can so that they can be employed very successfully. That to me is more of the grand challenge. It's not more, I mean, I love our PhDs, but what we need is everybody to be able to get an economic job by really taking a learning path that is tailored for the jobs.
Thank you very much, Satya. Thank you very much, Sami. And I'm afraid time is really running out, unfortunately. Super interesting discussion. And thank you also, Maria and Elizabeth, for moderating that. Satya, it was really a pleasure having you virtually visiting Germany. And also thank you, Sami, for being our host. And I'd like to close this call with a quote from you, Satya, saying, AI should empower human capabilities, should augment human capabilities and not replace them. And I think this is very much in line with all the work Sami and the whole team is doing. And I have to say, thank you very much and wish you a great remaining day.
Thank you so much, Sami, Maria, and Elizabeth. It's great seeing you all.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Take care, have a great trip and enjoy Germany.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.